This is Reset. I'm Sasha-Ann Simons. The people have spoken. For the first time, Chicagoans elected 10 members to the city's school board. Mayor Brandon Johnson will appoint 11 other members. They'll be tasked with figuring out how this new iteration of the board will operate in the midst of tension between the mayor and the CPS CEO, and in the face of a looming budget cliff. We'll speak with two newly elected members backed by different groups to hear how they're approaching this task and meeting the moment. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to hear from a new member who's backed by the Chicago Teachers Union. But first, we are joined by Angel Gutierrez. Starting January 15th, he will represent the 8th District on the south and southwest sides. It's a large district that includes parts of the South Loop, McKinley Park, Brighton Park, Gage Park, West Lawn, Clearing, and Garfield Ridge. He was backed by Democrats for Education, which is funded in part by groups associated with the school's choice movement. Welcome to the program, Angel.
Thank you very much for having us.
Congratulations. How does it feel?
It feels great. I'm kind of still in a little bit of awe, but I think it's a wonderful experience, and I think to your point, right, time to roll up our sleeves and get to the work at hand.
Right. So you ran against Felix Ponce, who's a former band director at Back of the Yards College Prep. What do you think was key to your success?
I think a couple things. I think my campaign resonated with district-wide. I had strong support from parents, from teachers, from elected officials in the area. And, to be honest, the mayor and the Chicago Teachers Union and the district were underwater when we polled. And so I think you had that. And then the Thursday prior, with the tax increase for property tax increase, I think that just kind of sealed the deal.
Now, you are a nonprofit consultant, so you've pledged to take a careful look at the CPS budget. What will you deem then as inefficient and worth cutting, and what are you going to prioritize keeping, no matter what it costs?
So I think first and foremost, we need to find out, I'd like to call for a forensic audit, how do we get the maximum dollars into the classroom, right? That's ultimately, I think, what we all want, right? We want the most money going into the classroom for our kids. So that's first and foremost. Being able to analyze, what ratios are, looking at all the budgets throughout the district. Do we have too many people at central office? You hear that often, but I don't know that until we take a deep dive into looking and examining all the numbers.
You said in an interview with WBEZ's education team that you want to make sure that CPS is using all available federal funds to meet operating costs. Are you concerned that under a Trump presidency, Illinois could lose federal funding for education?
We could, right? Especially if he's talking about eliminating the Department of Education, right? And putting things back. So I think that is something, that I'm hoping that the current administration is already beginning to make inroads and start making friends with the whole congressional delegation of Illinois, which includes Democrats and Republicans, so that we have a stake and a piece at the table, a seat at the table as we move forward.
You'll be sworn in the day that the moratorium on school closures ends. How will you approach schools with low enrollment?
I think one of the things that I ran on was that I'd adhere to both moratoriums that currently exist, so the one on school closures, but also that on new charter schools. I think, it's a bigger discussion. I think if you ask me what priority number one should be is really how do we tackle the $600 million deficit that projects to get to $1 billion by the end of the year once contracts are agreed upon, right? So that's the first business at hand, right? How do we create a sustainable plan, right? And stop piecemealing and stop come up with a very strategic analysis of what we're doing and plan so that we stop moving from year to year this piecemeal approach and once and for all tackle it. And it may mean that we put together a plan that's going to take 5 years, right? But at least let's put a plan together, right? Because then I think then we have much more credibility, whether when going to Springfield and to Washington, right? Because we have a plan.
You're supported by charter schools. The teachers union says charters drain financial resources from non-charter CPS schools. How will you work to ensure that every Chicago public school has what it needs to educate students?
That's what we were elected to do. So part of it is working across the board with all schools, right? Making sure that every school, and I think the one thing that people always forget is that charter schools are public schools, right? They get public dollars, right, from the pot. Wanting to make sure that every student, that every parent has an opportunity to send their kids to where they're going to be the most successful, right? But making sure that all the dollars are allocated. Again, how do we ensure that the maximum number of dollars from the $10 billion is going into the classroom? And that's something that we're going to have to look at.
So I wonder how you plan on working with all members of the board some might have different viewpoints and priorities, because this is a new version of the school board, right? We've got 11 members who were appointed, 10 including you who are elected. Mayor Johnson's still going to have considerable influence in addition to the ones he appointed. He's got 4 winning candidates who were backed by the CTU, right? So how do you work with everyone?
So I always tell people that one of my magic powers is the ability to bring people together. And that's what I did as I ran. I'm the guy who can bring the left, the right, the center, those that feel disenfranchised all together. And I think I've started to lay some of that groundwork over the course of the last couple of days with some of the newly elected. I think that, I would say this, that if you look at the results of Tuesday night, I think the governor said this best, right? That as we are looking to appoint new members, that we keep in mind the type of members that were elected by the people, right? And so I think that all 10 of us are all about our students, right? And so I think that with that focus, we're going to be able to find common ground on things, to make sure, again, I don't think you'll find a candidate who says that we don't want maximum dollars in the classroom, right? Because that's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
And it's just going to be a matter of trying to figure out how do we get there, right? And I think that being able to look at the budget before we go ask for more money, making sure that we're doing our own homework and that we're tightening up our belt where we need to, is going to be able to do that. And I think so. So from that perspective, I have a lifetime of working across the aisle and working with people and making hard decisions.
I mentioned this earlier, but there has been a lot of tension between the mayor and the CPS CEO, Pedro Martinez. Specifically, it's been over Martinez's refusal to pay the $175 million pension contribution for non-teaching staff, and the mayor requesting that CPS take out this $300 million loan to cover that and upcoming contract costs. So do you think that matters like these should wait to be decided when the new board is seated in January?
I do. I think that that's what the people voted for, right? They want to have transparency. I think that,
Tell us, where do you stand on those issues I just mentioned?
On both those issues, but no to a high interest loan. And I think that.
What about firing CEO Martinez?
No, that's a no-go. I think that anytime that you have principals and administrators who you have all support for, I think you keep him, and he's got groundswell from local community and parents and teachers. Do the same. Now, do I think that we should have a bigger conversation, again, later with our friends in Springfield about that pension payment? I think we can, right? Currently, the state covers pension for other school districts. So that'll be a conversation. Again, we have to mend some relationships.
Yeah. And you say you don't support taking out that loan, but you do support coming up with a sustainable plan to solve
long
this.
term, right? We need to stop moving away from piecemeal, and we have to tackle it. We have to figure out what's causing the structural deficit, and let's fix it, right? Because if you think of the dollars that are allocated, I mean, we currently aren't doing a very good job of providing for our students who have disabilities, right? It's a federal laws, right? That we have probably $3 billion in deferred maintenance
Mm-hmm.
that needs to come out, and then there's another $14 billion that need in capital improvement plans, right? These are things that the board should be tackling.
A lot to consider.
Yes.
All right. So that's Angel Gutierrez, newly elected school board member for the 8th District, covering parts of the Southwest side. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes. Now let's hear from Ebony DeBerry. She won in the 2nd District, which covers Rogers Park, Ravenswood, Lincoln Square, and other nearby neighborhoods. And she was supported by the Chicago Teachers Union. Welcome to the program, Ebony.
Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations to you as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
What does it mean personally to win this seat?
It means that I have the faith of my community to support them through a very difficult time with Chicago Public School System in a first-time election where their vote mattered and they have a representative that they feel confident about. That makes me feel wonderful.
What are your hopes for this new board? How do you want it to operate differently than the appointed board has done in the past?
I would like to see us make some bold moves ahead of time. Our Chicago Public School System should be provided for years to come, decades to come. It's the most sustainable system we have in the city, and we should be prepared for inflation, for raises, for students that are harder to educate. There should be dollars there, and we need better planning. I'm also very hopeful that different backgrounds, different neighborhoods, different experiences doesn't limit the potential of this opportunity. I mean, if everybody is interested in what's best for the students, we should be able to do some massively different and unique and things that have real vision and possibility for young people.
Several winning candidates, including yourself, had the backing of the Chicago Teachers Union. That's a group, as we know, is a strong ally of Mayor Johnson. He will also appoint 11 members of the board. Now, on election night, CTU President Stacey Davis Gates, she said, quote, "By my count, we have, 16 out of 21? So what do you make of that, Ebony? Do you see yourself as maybe part of a majority voting bloc on the board?
I think when you have large groups of people, it's hard to think that we're all going to agree about everything, right? And even if there is a majority interest, it's going to be harder to get there than anybody can assume at this point. That's a lot of personalities. We are represented in so many different neighborhoods, so many interests. And so I think it's up to us to figure out how we can affect the most of our populations at the same time, making, something that is going to be useful to all of our constituents. That's what I'm most interested in.
And you're a former teacher, is that right?
I am.
You're a CPS parent too?
Yes.
How does that inform your vision for the district?
I'm a former student, so I've seen it from many different venues. And I currently work in schools. I put parent volunteers in the classrooms with teachers. And so I see wonderful things happening in our school. I see so much potential. I see our principals being very ingenious and creative, making things happen for our students. So I'm really hopeful about what's possible because I know things are working out there. And I represent a lot of people who have great faith in our public education system.
Yeah. What's the biggest possibility that you're looking to see sort of come to fruition?
I really want to see the sustainable school model go forth. I want to see 2, 3, 4-year-olds being able to stay at school all day, learning all kinds of things. There is nothing that is impossible for young children to learn. So let's double down on them and give them more confidence for their whole educational life.
So on the campaign trail, Ebony, you mentioned wanting more staffing in schools. How do you anticipate being able to hire more staff when the district and the city has got this massive budget hole?
I know. I always think that we're supposed to think that there isn't enough, and I just don't believe it. We're in one of the richest countries in the world, one of the richest cities in the world, and I think we have to be very creative about how we make the budget, fill the budget gap, as well as get much more for our students. We know how much it costs to educate students with special need, students who come here from other countries, students who are poor. It costs a lot of money to give them the very best possible opportunity. And so we need to get realistic about how these numbers are increasing and prepare for them better in the budgets.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're going to be sworn in the day that the moratorium on school closures ends. How will you approach tough conversations about resources and under-enrollment?
Yes, I think it's important to talk to experts. I think it takes a psychological effect on whole neighborhoods when schools close and we never do anything with those buildings. I'm really concerned about that. I'm concerned that schools are being resourced that don't necessarily have to follow any regulations or guidelines of the public school system, and, how that really doesn't increase our value system among who our students are. And I just think that we have to be we have to take hard looks at everything that we do now currently, and everything is to be questioned.
Like what?
Yeah, how we're funding all our vendors. Who are our vendors? We have to be very investigative about the whole process, the whole budget, and everything
How we got here?
How we got here. A lot of us know how we got here, and that is super helpful. How do we impact the next 10, 20, and 30 years is the question that we need to be asking now.
Now, you do not support CPS taking out a loan, and you told WBEZ education team in a pre-election questionnaire, you said you aren't sure where you stand yet on firing Pedro Martinez because you didn't have all the details at the time. So as you've learned more, and as you learn more on the job, what will go into your decision-making process about whether or not he should stay or go?
I think there's excellent criteria out there about what makes a good manager, what makes a good leader. I am not super informed about how the public and the stakeholders that are most immediate to him feel about him. I'm not privy to that, but I think it's important. I think we need to look at that role, CEO, a little more carefully and think about going back to some kind of superintendent model. Someone who's had experiences in our schools and in our school system might make an incredible impact to our educational system.
Do you think that decisions like these, Ebony, and deciding the teacher's contract, that they should be made in January once the new school board is seated?
These are big decisions that are going to have to be made over the course of the next few months anyway. I don't think everything will be decided by then, and I will be incredibly, feel rewarded to make decisions so lofty for our school system. I do feel some of this will be worked out and some won't, and I'm not sure exactly what parts of that will be happening over the next 6 weeks.
You're about to find
8
out.
weeks. Yes. Yes.
Now, we didn't get to ask our previous guest about this live on the air, but Angel Gutierrez said in a WBEZ Sun-Times questionnaire that he does support standardized testing more than once a year. Where do you stand on that question?
I really don't think we need more than once a year. I think our children are underwater. I think using only one tool to figure out their giftedness is very unfair. We spend so much money on testing. That's something we might need to look into, and who benefits? Teachers know what our students know and what they need. And so we need to figure out with them what resources will take our students the farthest.
We'll leave it there. That's Ebony DeBerry, who's a newly elected school board member for the 2nd District, which covers Rogers Park, Albany Park, and Lincoln Square. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.